YouTube is dead. YouTube is over. That's what Twitter's saying, and that's why I'm here to you. I'm talking today. If you are on Twitter, or if you do any, if you're on it at all, and you go and you see these trends, you're going to see that the number one, at least for me, the number one trending topic right now is YouTube is over. So, could there be anything more relevant that I could potentially talk about right here? People are ticked off. And so I wanted to unpack this because I know that when I first saw the trending hashtag, I immediately said to myself, okay, why? What's going on? What is trending? And so I figured that's my role in your life, is to find that out and just tell you so that you don't have to guess, like many of us have to guess why this is actually trending. And you'll see, if you go to the tweet, you'll see a lot of tweets where people are saying, why is this trending? So I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. I've also got Jesse here with me. How do you pronounce your last name? Monk?
Minch.
Minch. That's right.
Like
Jesse Minch. Jesse's a high-level YouTube creator. He's our go-to here on the. This is a special edition of the Video Marketing Podcast, right? And so he's my go-to when it comes to organic YouTube. Jesse has over 490,000 followers across platforms, right?
Facebook's like 600,000 and YouTube's like 520,000, I think. Now.
I was just thinking about YouTube. You got 520 on YouTube?
Yeah.
Boom. I love that, man. So I mean, listen, it's creators like you who are in a absolute uproar right now. So let's talk about this a little bit, okay? So YouTube is over is trending largely, and I'm sharing this live stream out right now. I'm trying to share this all over the place. And Jesse, while I'm talking, you can share it into the other groups as well. Okay. If you're able to get in. YouTube is dead.
Let's see if I can. Facebook's being mean to me today. So.
I know Facebook's mean to you. But basically, what we're seeing here is that YouTube had a big policy change that came down yesterday, and everybody is going a little bit crazy about it. A lot of it has to do with them tightening up their harassment policy, and it's directly in response to something that happened about 6 months ago. And so, I've been looking through, obviously a lot of people remember this, but just to go back and let you know exactly what happened and why this all went down. There was this issue between Steven Crowder, who's a big right-wing personality. He's and then there was a Vox journalist, Carlos, I think Maza or Meza, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. So there was basically an issue there where I think Meza said that Crowder was, and I'm quoting CNN right now. Crowder said that he said that Crowder was using the platform to attack him with homophobic and racist slurs. And YouTube demonetized Crowder's videos at the time, so he couldn't earn money from the ads running on his channel. This is from CNN. But the biggest controversial thing was that YouTube said that they weren't going to take down Crowder's videos. So that was the big thing. They said that we're not going to take down the videos. What we're going to do is we're going to demonetize it and then take a better look at our harassment policy. And that harder look at the harassment policy is what ended up resulting in yesterday's changes. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here. Let's see. So this is the policy from YouTube. This is why YouTube is dead is trending. They updated their policy on harassment. They started taking down videos as a result of this policy, and a lot of people woke up this morning to find their videos deleted off of YouTube, a lot of prominent creators. And a lot of the issues, and we'll go into this sort of nuts and bolts thing in a second, but a lot of the issues here what they are that YouTube is now going beyond just directly banning videos and taking them down that directly talk about harassing and are directly dealing with that, now to implications of harassment and violence. And so that is now leading to a large amount of ethical gray area where we're seeing a lot of creators and a lot of people in the gaming YouTube space too are freaking out because they're worried that, because often there's simulated violence in video games and they're worried that they're going to start getting kicked off. And I'm seeing a lot of those tweets going around. And then there's been a lot of prominent YouTubers who have already had some of their videos taken down. And some of them, people love these videos. They're very thoughtful. And a lot of people would say that they don't have anything to do with bullying or violence. But whoever it was, whether it's people or robots, I guess we're not really sure how Google's even assessing this, are making calls on this. And what we're seeing as a result here is this a stronger stance. So what Google is saying here in YouTube is, we've always removed videos that explicitly threaten someone, reveal confidential information or personal information, encourage people to harass somebody else. And now they're saying that we're going to go a step further and not only prohibit explicit threats, but also veiled or implied threats. And so this includes content simulating violence toward an individual or language suggesting physical violence may occur. No individual should be subject to harassment that suggests violence. Beyond threatening someone, there's also demeaning language that goes too far, that could go against our hate speech policy, et cetera, et cetera. And the consequences of this are getting banned, demonetizing, all of these types of things. And this, what I'm seeing on Twitter, Jesse, and you're going to have probably a lot to say about both of these things, but what I'm seeing on Twitter is that people are not only, we can just go over to the hashtag here, people are not only upset about that, but they're sort of using it as a spring, that in conjunction with all of the crazy stuff that's happened around around the protection of children's content. And they're saying, well, between you guys making a call on what's kids appropriate and not, and all of this, like, is this bullying or not? We're just going to decide if it's implied or not. And I'm not trying to take a stance here in any way. I'm saying this is why this hashtag is trending. And when this kind of thing happens, sometimes this can lead to huge tectonic shifts in platforms, as we've seen over time. And so this is why this is important. I mean, YouTube is over being the top trending hashtag on Twitter. That matters, right? And so you see all of these tweets here. Let's see if we can find anything that's particularly worried. People worrying about supporting themselves. Let's see. A lot of things about creators being upset, of course. And we can keep, so basically there's a lot of people, as this has happened with Facebook many times before, just calling on you all to just sort of leave the platform. It's time to leave the platform. They don't care about us. They don't care about creators. They care more about basically making money, because they want to make sure that everything that is up there, we can put ads on. And if we continue to allow controversial stuff up there, we can't run ads on that, right? That's sort of the argument that's coming on the creator side. So let's bring Jesse into the conversation now. And Jesse, you're hearing some of this for the first time, I know. Tell me what your initial thoughts are on this.
Well, yeah, I didn't hear about the trending hashtag. I haven't dug into the new harassment policy in detail yet. But I will tell you, a lot of people are very misinformed on Twitter. First of all, gaming. YouTube just announced that gaming violence, they started to realize that that's not real. And because of that, they're actually going to open more monetization for gaming violent videos. So, like, that's just not true. What was the other thing?
Well, the children's content.
Right. So that's a whole nother can of worms. Let me get into that in a second. But certain content in general, like not being open for monetization. YouTube also recently announced that they're going to try to line up advertisers that would be more appropriate for that content now. So, you know, basically it used to be, well, it still kind of is at this point, that if your content is edgy or swearing or violent, that you might not get monetization, or you're going to get limited monetization. Well, now they've started this new push to try to say, well, what about R-rated films? What about advertisements for guns, or, things like that, which, I guess that's a whole nother can of worms of what could be advertised. But the point is, they're saying, how can we match up some of those companies with this kind of content? So they're actually starting to help that kind of content right now. But then when you bring in the thing of, okay, they could potentially take down your content because of harassment. Yeah, like you said, there's just all these other implications. And that, I guess, would bring me to the whole FTC and kids thing, which is like, you had that happen, and now you have this happen. And really, like, some of it's their fault. Not all of it is their fault. Some of it was out of their control. Some of it is. But like, when you have so many of these things happen in a row, I can definitely see why people are starting to think about jumping ship. You got to be really aware of and sensitive to people's feelings and perceptions and everything else that goes into a platform, especially when people are putting so much time and effort into it. And some people, their entire lives are based on it. Yeah, I mean, YouTube has had a string of these things lately. And then they also had the thing, I think it was about a month ago, maybe 2, where they were removing a lot of people's verified badge, and people had an uproar, and YouTube quickly backtracked on that and said, okay, we're not going to do that. So that was a good move on their part. So that would have been this would have been strike 3 if they hadn't have turned that around. But I don't know. This is,
so tell me, what have the trends been? I mean, obviously there's been some leadership changes and everything has happened. So what are the trends that you've been seeing in YouTube as Google's been more ingrained in it, and as things have changed over the past couple of years? How have things gotten more or less restrictive to creators? Do you feel like it's gone towards a more restrictive direction?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think really it's like, that's the internet. Like, it was the wild, wild west for how many years, and YouTube was kind of still a part of that wild, wild west until about, a couple of years ago when the first adpocalypse happened, right, which basically is where the edgy content started getting filtered out. And now you got the thing with YouTube Kids and the FTC, and now kids content's not okay. So now you got this little spot in the middle where it's like, it's family friendly, but not too family friendly, and it's not too edgy, and everyone feels like, I think, like they have to fit into that box. Or there's certain consequences. You don't get comments if it's kids content. You don't get notifications. Your monetization goes to 10% of what it was for YouTube ad revenue. But then on the other side, if you go too edgy, it's hard to get monetization then. So, and now this, you could, even if it's too pushy or aggressive or whatever, it could get your content taken down. So I can definitely see why people are feeling like it's very restrictive. But the thing is, I think this is stuff that's probably going to happen to every platform sooner or later. Maybe not so much, I think, with the, what's happening now with the more like edgy stuff, because you're going to have certain platforms that are just built for that, I think. But when you got something that's got as big of an audience as YouTube and is open to all ages and whatnot, you're going to have some of these issues. And I don't think Twitter is safe from it. I don't think, TikTok got fined from the FTC. Like, the internet is becoming more restricted, is my 2 cents on everything. But should we be worried about this? I mean, I know that there was a lot of buzz when is the kids thing, is that because you're going to see a lot of this. I want to make sure we provide context for everybody. You see this COPPA going around everywhere. Is that the kids policy? Okay. Yep. So there's a lot of sort of gray area around the kids policy. If you see COPPA, it's COPPA. So that's sort of the kids policy. And if you're a YouTube creator, you know that if you've gone into YouTube and you've tried to open it up, there's a pop-up that's like, is your content created for kids? We're going to be asking you that. And now every time that you upload a new video into YouTube, it asks you if it's created for kids. You have to do that, I think, at the channel level, and you have to do that there. I don't care. My channel is all about video marketing, right? And so it's so B2B, whatever. But I mean, your channel is a great example. Your channel is for
is for I mean, you have two. You have Inspire Video Marketing Channel, which is video marketing. It's like it's different than mine, but similar, right? It's B2B in that way. And then you have the other channel, which is basketball drills and stuff. And that's the channel that has like 500,000 subscribers or something. How can you make that argument? I mean, it's probably mostly not like it's. I don't even know. Like, what is your audience base? Like,
so. Yeah, and that's just it. You got to look at your demographics, like and that's just it. YouTube can only track from 13 and up. So if I go to my analytics, like I don't like. There's no way for me to for sure know if it's 13 and below people watching. So that's what the Copple Law is it can't be people 12 and under watching my stuff, basically. And I should say they can't be. So here's the whole thing is like so confusing, and I've been keeping up with like a lot of different lawyers' takes on this, and no one can seem to agree on what the rule is, because you've got some channels, and mine's like a perfect example where it's for a general audience. Kids absolutely could like it, but I know for sure I got a lot of parents watching my stuff. I got a lot of adult basketball players. I got a lot of coaches. So it's like the FTC hasn't really made it as clear as they could. YouTube hasn't. And I can understand why people are upset at YouTube, because YouTube could just make people, every time they come on YouTube, check a box and say, I'm 13 or above. But instead, they decided to put the onus on the creators and put the responsibility on them to say, oh, my content's for kids or not. And then if, the FTC decides that it is or isn't, it's all on you now, which there's supposedly legally, like, you're not collecting the data. So some lawyers are saying, well, you technically shouldn't be considered a website operator under the FTC, but they've worked it out. So basically the FTC can consider you an operator of the website, even though you couldn't get that data on these kids if you wanted to, unless you actually collect it through a form. And it's like, it all has to do with the cookies being tracked, in people's browsing history. So I don't know. I don't even remember what we started talking about. We went down this rabbit hole.
Well, we were talking about your basketball channel. It's kind of like so. How did you answer those questions? And how frustrated are you by it? Are you worried you're going to get shut down or get videos taken down?
So I'm kind of playing a wait and see right now, because you have to get it all marked by January 1st. And so there was an open comment period. I think that just ended yesterday, December 11th, where people could comment to the FTC and let them know their concerns, let them know that the ruling is very vague, that they give like a list of 10 things that you can look at to determine if your content is for kids or not. And it really just makes people more confused than anything. So I'm going to wait it out a couple more days, maybe possibly to the last week of December, to see what the FTC, if they put anything out, any changes, if YouTube makes any changes, before I make any of those determinations. Because if I'll probably end up doing it on a video by video basis, but like if I decide that, this video is a little bit more geared towards kids, I lose all my comments, my ad revenue is going to go down significantly. Odds are it'll probably end up getting a heck of a lot less views. Notifications are gone. For people can't subscribe and turn on notifications on that video. Like, there's just so many features that I would lose on those videos. And if there's a channel that's based on completely kids content, like, it would just cripple that channel. They would be done unless they, like, I've had a couple of videos on the Inspire channel talking about, like, okay, if your content is for kids, here's some things you better do, like, now, if you want to, like, try to keep this as a business, because you can't just rely on YouTube ad revenue anymore, which you never should be to begin with, but a lot of people have been.
Right. And are we not going to see targeted advertisements on kids stuff anymore? Was that part of it?
Yes. And that's why the ad revenue goes down so much, because for most creators, 60 to 90% of the ad money that they make is from targeted ads, because they work so well. And that's what they would, since the cookies are gone on those videos, they can't be tracked, therefore they can't be targeted. No more targeted advertising for that creator. No more big bucks from YouTube.
It's fascinating because, I mean, as somebody that's entrenched in the YouTube advertising world, I see the power of it, right? I mean, and it's kind of like YouTube advertising is so much more powerful than television advertising because you can target it. So, for example, like I've reached out to brands before where, you know, my kids watch Blippi. I don't know if you're aware of Blippi, but he's the most popular kids YouTuber. I mean, this guy's he's built a $20 million YouTube business making kids stuff. And so you're always talking about people not monetizing their channels. He did not make that mistake. And so monetizing beyond AdSense revenue, meaning no, he's got merchandise, plenty of it, and live shows. But I would always say, like, I would see Toyota commercials, Jeep commercials, you know, all these car commercials. I would see commercials for like iPhone apps and all sorts of stuff on there. And I'd reach out to them. I'd be like, do you know that like you should be excluding these kids channels so you're not spending money on those? And that whole game sort of changes now. And the thing is, it always used to be more powerful to run targeted advertising on YouTube than it was on television because of that targeting options. But when you can't target kids content, kids stuff, if you're in that realm, YouTube, I mean, unless I'm missing something, YouTube loses all of its power here. I mean, you're much better off on Saturday morning cartoons because you know you're getting in front of kids than on YouTube because you don't know you can get in front of kids, right? I mean, there's no way to do that. So if you are Honey Nut Cheerios, you're going to have much better luck on television because you did have better luck on Blippi, but now you can't get in front of Blippi's videos. So you're going to have to get on, right? I mean, unless I'm missing something there.
Yeah, I mean, I know
where does that end? Like, where's the line in the sand there, too? Like, is this the beginning? I mean, I know this is kids content, but now it's starting to go into this harassment stuff. And is it going to start happening on political stuff? And then if it starts happening on political stuff, is it gonna start? I know that there's a lot of LGBTQ groups and such that are really upset right now. As I'm going through my Twitter feed, they're upset. Because it's sort of a policy that's sort of meant to protect them, but I think they're worried that they're going to get censored as a result on the sort of like in that sort of backwards way of tracking that content incorrectly. And I'm seeing things about like staging YouTube walkouts and like all this crazy stuff. And this is why this hashtag is trending so much. So all of a sudden, I think it's like it's what a lot of people got ticked off about with Facebook as well in the beginning and all of this stuff. It's like, so basically you're just vanillaizing all of the content and like leaving and the thing like YouTube, it's a company. It's owned by Google. YouTube started as its own private company. Now it's owned by Google. Google is a public company. It's all a company, right? It's America. But at the same time, it's just it affects so many people that it's become a First Amendment issue. And so when you're talking about free speech, how do you fit into this? Because when you're mostly funded by advertising. So we can't exist without advertising, so we have to do that. But we can't limit free speech because of general ethics. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah. And so the one thing I've heard a lot of people say is like YouTube's just going to turn into, you know, TV. Like, you know, when we were kids, you had TGI Friday, you know, you had Full House and whatever else, and everything's super family friendly. And late at night, you know, you can get a little edgier stuff, but even then there was a limit. And so I think, you know, kind of what makes YouTube and stuff on the internet, there's a certain weirdness and uniqueness to it. I don't think that ever is going to go away. That will differentiate it from TV. But like you said, they have to. There's a bottom line they have to meet. They're a company. They have to make money. And then so when you bring in like things like free speech and whatnot, like I agree, like that's something that has to be considered. I think, you know, more often than not, when I've heard YouTube talk about this, they seem to say they're more on the side of allowing free speech. But at the same time, if there's pushback, you know, with getting advertising dollars, they might not be so willing to do that, you know? And there's also the issue of, well, is there actually free speech allowed? Because it is a business. It is their platform. So, you know, if they choose to, they could say, yeah, we don't want this kind of content on our platform. But I can see why other, you know, the people that are getting censored would be rightfully mad about that. So I don't think there's really one right answer. It's the fact that YouTube has just been around for so long and grown to have such a big audience. Like, you're gonna, no matter what they do, they're gonna have people disagreeing with them. I guess the big question is, how do they keep as many people on as they can, and I don't know. It's such a tough thing because they've got to try to please so many people on this. And then they got the government regulations, and, they feel like they have a moral responsibility too, to not condone violence or encouragement of that. So I personally don't get too hardcore involved into politics, but I know a lot of people that would be very much on one side and very much on the other for any one of these little details. And so when you got all those people shouting at them, I'm sure it affects them, because they got to think about, again, their money. They got to make sure the business is sustained. And I think that's probably always going to be their number one priority. But then number two, you got to be able to go to sleep at night. So I'm sure that's something the CEO, Susan, is thinking about.
Yeah, I was just looking through so I could remind myself of sort of Susan's timeline, because she's probably she's like every other or every third tweet in this hashtag, because all of the anger is being directed at her, right? Because I mean, she has a history of locking down things on this platform. I mean, she was there for the Logan Paul thing, who I interviewed, by the way.
Oh, really?
Right before this happened. It's so strange because he came out. I actually don't know what happened to YouTube Red. Is that still a thing? I guess it's still a thing. But he had
now.
Yeah, so he had a video. He had a movie coming out on YouTube Red, him and I can't remember the woman, but I interviewed both of them. And then this whole thing happened, and then she said that he didn't violate YouTube's 3-strike policy. And full disclaimer to everybody here, just to get the quick fix, I'm on Wikipedia, so I tell everybody that right away, in case, just so that we know where I'm getting this from, so that I don't get a comment later, which is he's just looking at Wikipedia. I don't know. So I'm going through just so I can get the quick fix. But there was this issue with ads sponsored by the British government and private sector companies had appeared ahead of YouTube videos supporting terrorist groups, which led to one of the bigger ones, because I think it says here that several large advertisers withdrew their ads from YouTube. She responded, clamped down a little bit, and then we go into this thing. So this is where we end up getting to. I mean, and it's inherently political. And I don't dive into much into the world of politics either. But when you're talking about censorship and free speech, and when we're trying to get people on media platforms and everything, we have to deal with this. Because I mean, you do direct one-on-one coaching all the time with people doing YouTube channels, and you're going to see, I guarantee, that your client base in 2020, they're going to feel exactly this sort of confusion, especially if they have a channel like yours, which could easily appeal to 9-year-olds as well as 30-year-olds. And they're going to say, well, what should I create content about? And, I'm creating content about stuff that I'm really passionate about that does have a political bent. Are they going to start ripping my stuff off of YouTube? Because, I mean, and to be honest, I'm a little naive at how they decide this. I'm sure that robots do a lot of it, though. I'm sure that there's a lot of transcript looking. They look through transcripts. They obviously are looking through comments and metadata all the time to see what the content of these videos are, and they're tracking. They have algorithms, I believe, to track trends through comments by certain users, and all of those things go together to take a look at why they should do something, why they should clamp down on a certain user. And I think it.
They can even look at your thumbnails.
Right. Yeah. They look at your thumbnails. Yeah. Right. And all of these things. And so, I mean, what does it sort of mean? I mean, the thing is, of course, a lot of these tweets are saying what all of us are thinking. Okay, where are we going to go instead? I'm going to leave YouTube and go where? To Vimeo? That's not really, it's not a platform. It's not a growth platform like this. It's just simply a place to share videos. I think of Vimeo more like Wistia or something, where you host videos more than YouTube, which is more like television. It's more like a media site where you go and consume things.
One thing I saw floating around in some Facebook groups is there's another one. I think it's called BitChute or something. I haven't even looked into most of them because I'm just it's not going to go anywhere. Maybe one of them will, but yeah, I don't see it.
It's odd because I'm a huge TikTok guy right now. I love TikTok, but it's algorithmic. it's much closer to Facebook and Instagram than it is YouTube because it's not search friendly. It is more powerful with hashtags than any other platforms right now, but it's very much algorithm. Everybody's trying to get into the algorithm, and it's a completely different. Like, it does not, like, there's nothing about it that has anything to do with long form video. So building value in that way is completely different. So it's not like you go from YouTube to TikTok, and you can't go from YouTube to any other platform because they're all already where YouTube creators wouldn't want them. I mean, you already can't do this stuff on Facebook. You can't do this stuff on these other platforms. Twitter limits you to a certain file size. I mean, like, it really, and I don't even think of YouTube as a social media platform. And that's the weird thing. It's kind of its own little type of platform. It's very hard to replace. That being said, you're going to see much less people seeing it as an opportunity. I mean, they may look at it, and where a lot of us have been like, oh yeah, you should start a YouTube channel for your brand. People might start saying, well, this isn't so much of an opportunity for me. Just the same as people are saying about Facebook right now because there's no organic reach. I think about this all the time. I create so much content for Facebook and Instagram right now. Like, I just blast it out there. And reach is so hard to come by. It's ridiculous. Sometimes I ask myself why I do it. Because I can't reach anybody unless I pay for it. And on YouTube, it could, I mean, it's sort of going in that similar direction sometimes. I mean, and so there's this gray area. And then you might just have people saying, well, there's too much gray area. Like, I don't know if it's actually going to be worth it. Why don't I just start putting video on my website again and driving people there? Yeah. Something like that.
Well, and I think one thing I want to touch on that you mentioned before is like how you said, you know, some of these changes that are so big, like YouTube has a reputation, I guess you could say, of making these like really dramatic, big changes. And a lot of people say they overreact. You know, they make too big of a change. They do it too quick without thinking about it enough. And a lot of times they don't roll those changes back like they did with the verified badge. So I can understand, like, for a while, a lot of people, it would be a big, you know, issue. And again, like, it's just why I'm always telling people, like, you got to get people off the platform onto an email list. You know, you got to find other avenues to make revenue. It's like, because you never know what the next change is going to be and how it's going to affect you, what it's going to be. You know, maybe like lately I've noticed organic reach on YouTube videos when you upload is very hit or miss. Like, if it does good, it just blows up. If it does not so good, they don't send it out to many people. So there's changes like that on the platform constantly on top of these, you know, new policies and the way they're handling comments and whatever else. I don't, like you said, though, I don't see where else they're going to go for the YouTube experience at this point. Like, I know there's like that BitChute and some other ones out there that people are trying to make that are supposed to be like similar, but they just don't have the library content, you know, that YouTube has. Like, you watch maybe one or two videos on there, but then what else are you really going to watch when there's nothing else on there? I don't know. I just think every platform is going to end up having these same issues sooner or later.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway message as we sort of start to wrap up here is that there's more gray area than ever. So make sure that you're just sort of thinking a little bit harder about your content. If you're going to be starting a YouTube channel, I just think you need to think a little bit harder about what that's going to be from a brand perspective.
For sure.
And make sure that you do all of your research. And I'm a big fan these days of just going your own way, blazing your own path, not trying to copy somebody else's system all the time. But I will say, when it comes to something like these YouTube gray areas, and if you're launching a YouTube channel in 2020, I would highly recommend at least getting into one of these Facebook groups or something with people that have been doing this for a really long time, so you can at least get their opinion, because there's a good chance that these folks have seen a lot of this. And this is part of the reason why I wanted to do the podcast today, because I wanted to make sure that everybody had a sense for what actually was going on here. Because when you start seeing this trending, you know that you're going to see 70% negative posts about it and 30% positive at best. And actually, I'm seeing no positive posts down this feed as I'm looking, except for people that are like, well, what do you want me to do? I'm not going to leave. It's my home. It's where I live. You know, that's like the best that I'm seeing. But most people are kind of just sort of upset, and they feel like it's not just about what's going on here. And of course, it's always hard to walk on eggshells. on platforms when you feel like, oh, I don't know if I can make this content because I feel like it might get taken down. And the worst is I don't know if I can get this content, not because it'll be taken down, but because it'll get like suppressed. Like its organic reach will be suppressed and you won't even know about it.
Yeah.
You know? And then it's just kind of like you could make content for weeks and weeks and months, and you would just have no idea exactly why these were happening. Like, am I just not showing up in search? Are my videos not good enough? Is it my thumbnails? What's going on? It turns out it's just not serving because YouTube is, and that's obviously going to start happening. I mean, it happens on the other platforms, and it's going to start happening more on YouTube.
Yeah.
So feel free to comment on this video. Jesse and I will get back to you if you have any specific questions. Oh, Arthur has a question. Is it an effort on YouTube's part to scale paid video? That's a great question because that's what Facebook and Instagram are doing, right? Well, I won't. That's actually not fair. I mean, Facebook and Instagram are not scaling paid advertising as a result, tightening down harassment policy just to scale paid advertising. And YouTube isn't doing that either. But I think it's kind of more like, well, that's another sort of, not feather in the cap, but it's like a sort of bonus of it. Is it's kind of like, if we're being tighter on what can happen organically on this platform, then we will have to ask people to push traffic more. But I don't necessarily really think this is what it's about. I really think it's highly political. I think it's a highly politically motivated thing. I think that Susan Wojcicki, am I saying that right?
I don't know. I don't even bother trying. I just say Susan and leave it.
She was in the last episode of, or she was a character like off screen in the last episode of, what's it called? That show that just ended, Silicon Valley. So they said it there. But I really think this is just based on pressure. I mean, it's a PR. There's a lot of PR things at stake, and there's a lot of people getting harassed. I mean, there is bullying and harassment on YouTube. Don't get me wrong. Oh, yeah. So the question is, how do you send out a computer? I mean, there's how much content being posted on YouTube every minute, like 1 billion hours or something?
Yeah, I forget the stat off the top of my head. Yeah, but it's like every minute, it's like 1 million.
Yeah. So how do you send bots out to patrol that content? And so I think at the end of the day, it's almost like more regulation better than less when you're dealing with a basically uncontrollable amount of content. So to answer your question, Arthur, my opinion is that it's actually not motivated by a boost in paid spend towards YouTube. That's my sort of personal opinion about it. I don't know if you'd agree, Jesse.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's just pressure. Yeah. I mean, they've been getting slammed every which way lately. And I feel like them as a platform feel like they're walking on eggshells, but
exactly. Right. Yeah. I think the hardest thing is the gray area. You just don't know what to create. You don't know what you can and cannot create. Right. And if you read all of the policies, that's how you'll feel. I mean, right. when you get into words like implied, you always don't know where you're going to be. Right. I mean, oh, well, there's your video won't comply with policies if it's implied that it's doing X, and you kind of don't know who's making those decisions. Like, you're not having conversations with people where they're like, combing over your video and watching every second of it and being like, yeah, all right, yeah, I guess that complies. Okay. Like, I don't know that that's happening. I think it's mostly algorithms.
And that's just it. I feel like with this FTC thing, like from the FTC and from YouTube with the FTC and with YouTube on this harassment, like, there just needs to be some more like clear guidelines, some lines in the sand, more transparency about what's going on if your video is not being shown organically because of that. I just think they need to do a better job of putting that out there because, like you said, it just leaves so many creators in the dark, and now they just, okay, well, maybe I just won't make videos.
Yeah, it's sort of a tough moment. I mean, I'm sure this stuff will blow over, but as we saw on the other platforms, it's more of like the escalator effect, which I literally just made up and don't know if it applies. But it's, I mean, because we saw it on all the other social platforms. It's sort of PR disaster, then policy change, PR disaster, policy change, PR disaster, policy change, and over time there becomes so many policy changes that people start feeling a little bit hamstrung by the platform, which is how many people feel on Facebook now. So this could be sort of the beginning of that on YouTube. And so it's understandable why people feel, especially people that invest so much in this, because it's not a small thing to create a YouTube channel. If you're trying to do it right, it's a lot of work. And so I can see why people feel that way. Jesse, thank you so much for being with me here on short notice. I wanted to make sure that we sort of delivered this value ASAP to everybody. If anybody has any comments, let us know and we will get to them. Thanks, everybody. Cheers.